My parents had one unbreakable rule no child was allowed to have: more hair than my dad. And to enforce that, they did everything from making me wear a swim cap for 20 hours a day, forcing hormones into my meals, to stretching my scalp with a DIY device in the basement. I thought I was living in a fever dream. But no, that was my childhood. In today's video, you'll hear one of the most insane and controversial stories ever shared on Reddit: a girl forced by her parents to undergo surgery, all to match her father's baldness level, and her desperate battle for freedom when the entire world sided with her obsessed abusers. Think the legal system will protect the victim. Think social media will care about the truth. This story will make you question everything, even the true meaning of the word family. Chapter 1: The Father Who Wanted Me Bald. For family uniformity. When I was little, I imagined growing up would mean learning how to drive, going to college, having a boyfriend. You know, the usual teenage stuff. But then when I turned 14, my parents informed me of an important family ritual: I would have to undergo scalp reduction surgery to match my father's level of baldness. I thought they were joking. Then I saw the fake medical files, the anatomical diagrams, and my mother's eyes when she said every strand of hair thicker than your father's is a slap in his face. I froze. She wasn't joking. My dad had gone bald at 23. My mom had female pattern baldness, and both of them hated anyone with thick hair, especially their own children. I'm not exaggerating. They called people with good hair show-offs and gene abusers. They kept a photo album filled with pictures of hairy criminals, each face circled in red and marked with the word "vain" in red ink, like some FBI manhunt. They met in a support group for people dealing with hair loss, and their love was twisted. They bonded over their mutual hatred for other people's hair. Our house was always heated to 80 VW year-round. No one was allowed to wear hats, even in winter. Dad called hats a betrayal of bald pride. Every child upon turning 14 had to offer their hair as a kind of family sacrifice. My sister was the first. I remember she had beautiful long chestnut hair, the kind that made strangers turn their heads when she braided flowers into it. Now she wears a wig, thin, patchy, and she constantly scratches her scalp from nerve damage caused by the surgery. I've seen her stare into the mirror with hollow eyes like she didn't even recognize herself anymore. Then it was my turn. They took me to meet Dr. Ibarra. His clinic was located in the basement of a pet grooming salon. Yes, you heard that right. He used to be a veterinarian, lost his license after conducting illegal experiments on show dogs. But to people like my parents, he was a genius. Dad found him on an online forum for bald individuals fighting for genetic equality. They said I was going to get a density adjustment surgery. They showed me a diagram of my head with red circles, donor sites for scalp removal. My dad said, "He's an artist. Just look at your sister." I turned to look at her, and I swear my blood froze. She had once been a symbol of springtime with vibrant, flowing hair. Now her head looked like a war zone, deep scars, shiny, stretched skin, each patch looking like it had been cut and stitched back on wrong. My parents held a hair farewell ceremony for her by burning all her old hair accessories in the backyard. Then they took a family photo where everyone was required to show an equal level of scalp exposure. While my friends had birthday photos with cakes and balloons, I had a family portrait where the ceiling lights reflected off our bare, gleaming heads. And that's when I understood this wasn't about genetics. This wasn't about twisted love. This was a cult disguised as family. Chapter 2: The Baldness Initiation, from swim caps to poison. After meeting the veterinarian turned cosmetic surgeon, I entered what my mom called the pre-surgery phase, or as she so lovingly put it, the journey to liberate yourself from the slavery of hair follicles. You think I'm kidding, God, I wish I were. First, they made me wear a tight rubber swim cap, 20 hours a day. No, not for swimming, but to cut off blood flow to my scalp and weaken the hair follicles. It felt like my head was a hard-boiled egg wrapped in a condom, and that was just the warm-up. My mother would count every single strand of hair on my head each morning, using a magnifying glass and tweezers. She frowned like she was inspecting cracks in national infrastructure. Whenever she found new baby hairs growing, She'd mutter under her breath, like someone possessed, "We'll need to take more skin." It's resisting. It's rebelling. Then she made me hang my head over boiling water to steam the scalp. A simulation, apparently, of what I'd look like once I was gloriously bald. The steam, the swim cap, her stare. It felt like I was being tortured in a salon-themed dungeon. Then came the soft persuasion phase. My parents handed me a forged medical consent form already signed in my name and said, "Just sign it already so the whole family can have some peace." I refused. And that's when the soft part ended. My mom started mixing hair removal cream into my shampoo. When I found out, she just smiled and said, "It's just a demo." So you know how joyful baldness feels. Ever had your hair fall out in clumps while showering? I have. And I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone except maybe my mother. But I'm not the kind of person who goes down without a fight. I started my own little guerrilla war against baldness. I secretly borrowed minoxidil from a friend. It was his dad's hair growth treatment. Every night I'd massage it into my scalp like I was performing a resurrection ritual for dead follicles. I added castor oil, vitamin E onion juice, desperation, and sheer rage. Literally anything that might work. And I did the one thing no one in my house dared do in front of my dad. I grew my hair out. Then came the day of the big surgery. That's when I played my final card. I coated my entire scalp in poison ivy sap. My head swelled like a volcano, red, burning, oozing. I looked like a zombie extra on The Last of Us. When we arrived at the doctor's, the unlicensed ex-vet, he looked at my scalp like he was staring at a dog that had been stung by 50 bees and said, "Cutting into that could lead to brain infection. I'm not touching it." My parents immediately objected. "It's fine. Her brain's strong, just cut." I sat there scalp ballooning and realized I wasn't their daughter. I was a failed experiment, but 3 other doctors also refused, and for the first time in my life, I thought maybe I'd won. I was wrong. With surgery off the table, my parents moved to what they called alternative follicle management. Sounds like a medical thesis, right? Nope. It was forcing me to sit under UV lamps for hours to fry my hair like hay, lacing my food with testosterone in hopes I'd go bald like a 50-year-old man, installing industrial strength blow dryers throughout the house that triggered automatically whenever I walked past. I had to sprint around like I was playing parkour just to avoid random heat traps. Chapter 3. The truth twisted, and I became the crazy one in everyone's eyes. I thought once the neighbors called the cops. Once my dad got caught holding bloodied sheep shears and a DIY scalp stretching device straight out of Saw, that it would be over. I thought they'd finally see the truth. I thought I'd be saved. Turns out I was way too optimistic. The police showed up. Paramedics wrapped my head in gauze. Blood still seeped through the scratch on my scalp. I sat on the back step of the ambulance, feeling like a survivor from a zombie movie, except no one was clapping. My mom stood by the window, blank-faced, staring straight into my eyes. She moved her lips silently, no sound, but I read her lips clearly. "Tell the truth, and this whole family falls apart." Then my sister arrived, still wearing that pitiful wig that looked like scorched grass, and she shouted to the police, "My sister has a history of self-harming." The paramedic working on my wound paused, looked at me. "Did you put this stuff on your scalp?" "Voluntarily poison ivy. Swelling. Rash." Yeah, it looked self-inflicted, and technically it was, but for survival. I tried to explain, but the story out loud sounded like a downvoted Reddit post, flagged for too much fan fiction. My parents tried to surgically reduce my scalp to match my dad's baldness. I had to sneak hair growth meds. Then I smeared poison sap on my scalp to stop the surgery. The paramedic's eyes widened. One officer turned to another and smirked. I sat there reeling from the pain and humiliation. And then I saw my dad sitting in the back of the police car texting. I found out later he was summoning his baldness warriors from an online forum, asking them to prepare to testify. The next morning, my seventh grade science teacher showed up coffee in hand, eyes full of fake compassion, and told the cops, "This father is just going through a tough time. He's very devoted." Devoted, yeah, to turning his daughter's head into a research specimen. Then came CPS, Child Protective Services. I had hope. Spoiler, I shouldn't have. The CPS lady wore business attire, held a clipboard, and asked, "Have you ever hurt yourself before?" I blinked. I mean, I intentionally caused inflammation so they couldn't cut into me. I didn't want my head sliced open. She nodded, jotted something down, didn't ask about the scalp stretching machine or the UV torture lamps or the testosterone-laced dinners. My dad stepped out of the police car holding a printout from a medical website, claiming that his homemade scalp stretcher was a back therapy device. One officer even commented, "I get back pain from golf too. That thing looks kind of useful." I nearly screamed. Then, my best friend's mom, who had come to pick me up, hugged me and whispered, "Just say it was all a misunderstanding. It'll be easier." My mom, now acting like a Lifetime movie lead, put on an Oscar-worthy performance, cried, sobbed, talked about her body dysmorphia, claimed my refusal to go bald had triggered her trauma. The officers exchanged glances, their eyes softened, and me, the girl with the head wrapped in gauze, I was now seen as a rebellious teenager torturing her poor, fragile mother. After 3 full hours, my parents got to stay in the house. I was relocated temporarily to my friend's place. No arrests, no charges. On the drive back, my friend's mom whispered to her husband, "Maybe the girl is paranoid. No one could be that crazy." He nodded, scratching his slightly thinning hairline. That moment, I realized even victims aren't believed if their truth is too uncomfortable. My story slipped out of my hands. I was no longer the narrator. I had become the villain in someone else's fiction. Chapter 4, Social Media, Relatives, and School. Everyone turned their back. I thought I had hit rock bottom after the sheep-shear incident, but it turns out rock bottom has a basement, and people up there are more than happy to throw stones down at you instead of pulling you up. The next morning, I got a call from school. The school counselor, with the same tone you'd use if I had punched a classmate, said, "Before you return to class, we'll need to schedule a family mediation session. It's policy when there's internal conflict. Mediation with the people who laced my breakfast with hormones, with the man who threatened me with livestock clippers." But no, she went on. "This is to help the whole family move forward. Don't worry, it's all in your best interest." It sounded like a brainwashing ad. Then my phone exploded with messages from relatives. People I hadn't spoken to in 5 years were suddenly armchair psychologists. "Your father is in so much pain. How could you do this to the man who raised you? Sometimes teenagers just need to listen more." One aunt even sent me a selfie of my dad, eyes red, bald head glistening, photo edited in soft yellow lighting like some moody art piece. I had no words. That afternoon, my sister posted a long Instagram monologue. The profile pic, her, with thick, shiny hair from 2 years ago. Hair that had never been cut, let alone surgically removed. The caption read, "Family is everything. Learn to forgive those who hurt you because they're hurting too." And the comments, a flood of admiration. So brave, so full of love. The dream big sister, and me, I posted about the truth, about the forced surgery, the stretch device, the testosterone. Within 45 minutes, my account was locked for self-harm content. I made a new one, got banned again, tried a third, IP blocked. Someone was sitting there reporting everything I said the second I said it. That night, my only real friend, the one who helped me escape, admitted, "My mom thinks maybe you should try to see your parents' side. Maybe they were just worried about you. Worried they tried to cut open my scalp." She added, the skin stretching stuff sounds kind of hard to believe." She wouldn't look me in the eyes when she said it. And I knew I had just lost another person. The next day, I went to pick up my anxiety meds. The pharmacist smiled kindly and said, Your dad's really inspiring. His baldness support group helped me learn to love myself. I nodded, swallowed the tears. There was no point telling her he had spiked his daughter's food with testosterone. On day 3, my parents filed a missing persons report. The local paper ran the headline, "Teenage Girl Missing. History of Self-Harm by Photo." A yearbook pic, stiff-faced, sleep-deprived eyes. Meanwhile, my parents stood outside our house, a house now scrubbed clean of all evidence. Only decorative potted plants left cleverly hiding the industrial blow dryers. My boss at the cafe called. "I think you should take some time off. You can come back when things settle. We can't have someone with this kind of attention working the register, right? Nobody wants to see the girl who shaved her head from delusions pouring cappuccinos." And then I tried to access my bank account. Frozen. I wasn't 18 yet, and my parents had temporarily taken over my finances during my supposed mental health crisis. Everything I had saved to escape them was no longer mine. That night, I lay on a guest bed in the only friend's house still willing to take me in, and I realized every system that was supposed to protect me had become a tool to silence me. The police, CPS, the school, social media, my family, even my friends. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I had become the villain in everyone else's version of my story. Chapter 5, Pretending to Reconcile. To play their game and take back the truth. I used to think that fighting back against my parents meant standing tall, screaming loud, telling the truth to the whole world. But now I know truth doesn't win, not if you scream it at the wrong time, in the wrong place, to the wrong people. So I went quiet. Not because I gave up, but because I finally learned how to play their game. I started pretending to reconcile. I nodded when I had to. I softened my tone when speaking to social workers. I gave weak smiles during counseling and said, "I'm learning to understand where my parents are coming from." One time during a family therapy session, I looked straight into my mother's eyes and said, "I get it now. You just wanted me to share the family's pain." She cried. Actually cried. And I took a mental screenshot of that moment, an emotional receipt. Pretending to forgive made the system loosen its grip. They thought I was making progress, gaining clarity, starting to accept reality. But the only reality was, I was buying time to gather evidence. During one supervised home visit, I snuck into my dad's study while he was in the bathroom. I found a locked drawer inside my hairbrush. Next to it, small Ziploc bags containing my sister's hair, labeled with dates. A collection? A sick collection? I wanted to scream, to vomit, but I swallowed it all down and returned to the living room wearing my best reconciliation smile. Another time I saw my sister had left a small notebook on the living room shelf. On the cover was a sticky note, "For when you're ready." I snuck it into my jacket. It was her journal. The first page read, "I once believed that giving up my hair would make Dad stop. I was wrong. I just helped him justify hurting others." She had actually signed the consent form believing it would bring peace, but in reality, she just paved the way for madness. Later, during a home therapy session, I faked fatigue and asked to rest in the study. Once alone, I plugged in the USB drive I had prepared. I downloaded over 200 posts from the Baldness Warriors forum, where my dad had openly shared his plans. Start thinning your son's hair at age 11. DIY scalp stretcher, review thread. How to lie to doctors and get pediatric scalp surgery approved. Each post was another brick in the prison I had been forced to live in. I also started reaching out cautiously for outside confirmation. One of my dad's former colleagues who had stayed silent for years called me after reading about the investigation. "I used to think your dad was just a little obsessed. Now I know I was wrong." He forwarded me an old email chain with my dad dated 3 years ago. In it, my father had asked for help finding a discreet enough surgeon to perform follicle density adjustment on a minor. The more evidence I gathered, the more I lost. The family who had taken me in, they were sued for harboring a runaway minor. CPS launched an investigation into them. The couple began fighting constantly. My friend stopped talking to me. I lost another safe place, but this time I didn't stop. I wasn't the cowering girl in the corner anymore, hugging her head when Dad got close. I was the one collecting receipts to expose a twisted system disguised as family love, and I started using their own tactics. I sent anonymous tips to reporters. I seeded targeted info online. I softened relatives with half-true stories until they let something slip. I played the role of the recovering daughter just to gain more access. I had become a mirror of my parents, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I hated myself for it, but I understood something now. Survival isn't always clean. And if I had to become a manipulator to destroy the lies they built, I would. And here's the scariest part, I was better at it than I ever imagined. Chapter 6. The trial turned upside down. When the truth couldn't be shaved away. The final day of the trial came a day I once believed would never arrive. I couldn't sleep the night before, not out of fear, but because I was preparing. Preparing for the ultimate dissection, not of my scalp, but of the perfect story my parents had been constructing their entire lives. The courtroom was packed. The benches were split cleanly down the middle like a Cold War standoff. On one side, my relatives, most of them nodding along with my mother, as if she were some justice-seeking warrior for bald equality. On the other side, former classmates, a few neutral teachers, and a quiet pastor who came in, looked around, and sat beside me. That small act nearly brought me to tears before the hearing even started. My father entered, dressed in a suit, looking like a respectable, older businessman. My mother wore beige, her hair neatly pinned, eyes brimming like she was recovering from some emotional war, caused, of course, by a rebellious daughter and her so-called mental breakdown. They looked heartbreakingly pitiful. It was maddening. Then my lawyer began with a simple question. Sir, can you confirm whether this handmade scalp-stretching device was ever used in your home? My father raised his chin and replied, have back pain. That's a lumbar support tool I personally designed. And then my lawyer played a video clip from the Baldness Warriors forum showing my dad giving a full tutorial on how to build the exact device to redistribute follicle density on children's scalps. The courtroom went silent. My dad had no words. Next came the pharmacist, the one who had sold testosterone to my mother without a prescription. He stood, hands trembling, stammering. I knew it didn't sound right, but I was scared of losing my job. The opposing lawyer tried to dismiss the testimony as irrelevant. The judge denied the motion. Then came the USB drive from my sister, hours of secret recordings of my parents discussing shaving the children clean to make the family unified. There was one clip of them holding hands, laughing hysterically at the idea of a bald family, posing together for Christmas photos. I nearly vomited. Then my lawyer read aloud, post after post from my father's online activity. My daughter's still being stubborn. I've increased the UV dosage. Shaving isn't enough. You have to alter the skin itself. Hearing those words, I remembered every night I sprinted through the hallway to dodge the automatic blow dryers. Then came the most crucial part of the case. Was I the child who had smeared poison ivy on her own scalp to stop a surgery legally mentally incompetent? The court appointed an independent psychiatric evaluator. After the evaluation, he stood and said, "This girl is not paranoid. She's not delusional. In fact, she's highly rational. Her hypervigilance emerged because every system kept ignoring her reality." For the first time, someone believed me. When the judge asked me what I would like the sentence to be, I could have said, prison, fines, public exposure, but all I said was, I want them to receive treatment, be kept apart, and never be allowed near any child again. The courtroom fell silent. Even my lawyer paused. The judge signed the emancipation order. My parents were legally barred from contacting me until they completed mandatory psychiatric treatment and were cleared by specialists. My finances were transferred to a third-party trust until I turned 18. That day, the truth became official. No longer the ramblings of a troubled girl. I walked out of the courthouse not like a hero in a movie. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt light, as if for the first time my hair was allowed to grow freely. And so was my mind. Chapter 7. I learned to love my hair, not to please anyone, just for me. After the trial, I didn't go home, because I no longer had a home in the old sense. The house I once lived in was put up for sale a few months later. My sister told me that the moment she stepped past the threshold, she felt like she couldn't breathe. I knew that feeling. I moved into a small apartment near my college, funded by court-ordered financial support. No one monitored me anymore. No one touched my hair while I slept. No one mixed hormones into my vegetable soup. No one counted the hairs on my head every morning. But also, no one made me dinner. No one asked if I was okay. Freedom, as I learned, comes with an enormous void. I spent the first month learning basic things. These are the things parents were supposed to teach you. How to pay a bill. How to boil eggs without them exploding. How to change your bed sheets without throwing out your back. None of those were included in my mother's perfect family curriculum. I started hormone recovery therapy to reverse the effects of the testosterone my mother had secretly slipped into my food. Each injection felt like a small cut, not just into my skin, but into the trust I'd once had in the concept of family. I used to think the worst pain was being hurt. But worse than that is when the people who created you don't even see you as human. My hair grew back. At first I let it grow just because no one was stopping me anymore, but then came the first compliment. Your hair is really beautiful. And I flinched. I avoided their gaze. I panicked they'd ask, what shampoo do you use? And I'd have to answer poison ivy, grown wild in my backyard. My therapist explained PTSD doesn't always come from violence. It can come from being taught that your very existence is offensive. Each strand of hair I had was once labeled a slap in my father's face. So now, when I look in the mirror and see my hair, I still feel guilt, but I've started relearning. Not how to style my hair, but how to accept that my hair is not a rebellion. It's not a statement. It's not a threat. It's just mine. I went back to my old job at the coffee shop. My former coworker nodded at me, didn't ask anything, just handed me an apron and said, "Welcome back." I wanted to hug him. I didn't, but I wanted to. I joined a support group for survivors of family abuse. For the first time, I sat in a room and said, "My parents forced me to go bald because they couldn't stand me having more hair than them." I braced for disbelief. But no, just slow nods. One woman whispered, "My mom made me bind my chest because she couldn't handle her daughter looking more womanly than her." And at that moment, I wasn't the crazy one in the room anymore. I started writing down everything that had happened, not to post it online, but to understand it for myself. I wrote about my sister, about the journal she left behind, about how she had stayed silent, not because she agreed, but because she had once believed that her sacrifice might save me. I forgave her, not because the pain was gone, but because I understood she was a victim too. We started exchanging letters, at first handwritten, then eventually supervised therapy sessions. No dramatic hugs, just quiet questions like, "Do you remember the smell of the laundry softener when we were kids? Where did you used to hide the chocolate?" Memories weren't just evidence anymore, they became the foundation for rebuilding family differently. One day I picked up a pair of scissors and trimmed the ends of my hair, not to meet any standard, not to hide, but to choose for myself. I was no longer anyone's daughter. I was just me. And my hair, thick, softly curled, shimmering under the sun, was no longer a crime. It was a symbol of survival. every strand of hair thicker than my dad's bald spot was considered betrayal. That absurd line wasn't just a joke. It was family law in one of the most unhinged true Reddit stories you'll ever hear. In today's video, you'll follow the story of a teenage girl forced by her parents to undergo scalp reduction surgery, take testosterone-laced food, wear a rubber swim cap for 20 hours a day, and even fend off an attack with sheep-shearing scissors, all because her hair was too thick. But the obsession didn't stop there. When she fought back, every system meant to protect her from the police, to CPS, to social media, turned on her painting a terrifying portrait of what happens when a Reddit horror story becomes real life, when the manipulator knows exactly how to make the victim look insane.